Hello, everyone. Today we have Mr. Timothy Crawford with us. You want to stay tuned for this entire episode. He's going to tell us about wealth and why we need to have a blueprint for this wealth. And today I would like for Mr. Timothy to introduce himself to our audience.
Good morning, Teresa. And I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk with you. I'm Tim Clifford. I've been doing investments since I was 20 years old, starting on the commodity exchange and starting kind of in that trading world. And then I realized I couldn't hold on to money. I'd make a lot of money and then I'd lose a lot of money. And all of it. So then about 30 years old, I kind of shifted into more of the stock side of the business. And I've really spent the last 25 years basically in the investment stocks, mutual funds, financial planning. I'm a certified financial planner, and I currently live in Florida, and I have about 50 clients or so that I work with. So that's really my kind of short background on what I do.
Okay, well, of course, I had the opportunity to look at your profile. And before we dig into the meat and the juice of everything, you work for, well, I would say a pretty high powered investment firm. And in working with those clients, you saw that there was a difference in the people who made a lot of money versus the people who had accumulated a lot of wealth. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So that's what prompted me to actually write the book Plan Assist. So, and I'm going to give you kind of the short story of how I came about it. So, at our church, we have a whole group of different people in different categories, and of that group, we do, like most churches, we'll have different, planning programs to help people. And for Dave Ramsey being one of them, and some financial advice and other, et cetera. And anyways, one of the other financial advisors that was in our church was running a financial planning program. And it was one of those like 9-week programs. And there were couples that were going through that program. And he happened to have to leave for 2 weeks. He was from South Africa. So he was going back to South Africa. And he said, Tim, can you step in? Now they had the agenda, so it was relatively easy. I could kind of step in. And there was 5 or 6 couples in there. And Teresa, this occurred to me because I'm certified, or I had gone through the Ramsey program like you, because we talked a little bit before this particular call. So I understand Dave Ramsey very, very intently, and had when I went in and did this program. But one of the things that I hadn't experienced until I did this training program was these were 6 couples who were actually very responsible. They were there to learn about finances. They were there to learn about how to invest. They were there, but they weren't really highly in debt. Right. So they had decent amounts of income. They were putting money in their 401ks. Most of them owned a house or were in the process of buying a house. But that group isn't a perfect fit for Dave Ramsey typically, right? Because Ramsey's more, I'm really high in debt and I need to figure out a way to get out of it, and gives you the baby steps, right? So it occurred to me that there was a whole bunch of people kind of in that middle group. So I think there's really 3 groups. I think there's kind of Dave Ramsey people that need to get out of debt and kind of get responsible and get their finances in order. There's another group kind of on the other end that have a decent amount of money, make a decent amount of money. Usually they'll have financial advisors, okay? And then there's this group in the middle that I just think no one really talks to or gives them the education and the coaching like what you do, and the help that they need in order to kind of get themselves financially independent. And so that's kind of the long story of kind of Plan Assist. And then I'll just quickly touch on this and stop, and then you can start asking me questions. Is in Plan Assist, what I found was there's a group of people that make a lot of money, but they really have no money. And then there's a group of people that have a lot of money, and they might make a lot of money too. But those 2 groups of people make different financial decisions. And it's very, very minor. It's almost subtle in the sense of how someone with a lot of money makes financial decisions. And it's so subtle that you wouldn't know it unless you were lucky enough for, like me, I worked at Charles Schwab and Company for 10 years. So I worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. And I got to know them, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, so this person just makes a lot of money, and kind of money goes in and out, but this person actually has a lot of money, and the way that they make decisions is just subtly different. And the main difference is this: it's people with money, they all have a plan. Okay, not and I'm not talking about some 50-page PDF that they put in a drawer. They know where they are, they know where they're going, and their significant other, they're on some kind of strategy or some plan, right? So they know how much income they have, basic. So it could be a 1 or 2-page document, but they have a plan. The second thing that people with money have are they're diversified. So they'll be diversified across not only investment, but they'll be diversified across income. A lot of people with money, they'll have income from multiple sources, especially as they get into retirement. So they're not going to be dependent on 1 or 2 or 3 income streams. A lot of times it'll be 3 and 4 and 5 income streams, right? Wow. So that makes a huge difference because they're diversified across income streams. And then lastly, they're diversified across tax liability. So they're diversified across taxable, tax deferred, kind of your 401ks, and then your Roths, right? Or your life insurance. So they'll have tax-free bucket. And then the last big difference between them, and I think this is the single hardest one to do, is seek counsel. I think that's a really difficult one for people in that kind of second bucket category who have been pretty successful in careers and in businesses. How do they go out and find and seek counsel? So that's a long answer. But that kind of sets up the rest of the call. So
okay, and so saying what you're saying, are you saying like the people who have significant wealth, they will have someone that help them manage their money versus the people who make a lot of money? Do you think it's because they don't seek counsel to grow their money?
They don't seek counsel. They don't even know how to seek counsel. I mean, it's in the mass. I mean, I am convinced it's millions and millions of people don't even know how to seek counsel.
And you know that's sad, but Mr. Tim, I have to share this with you. I was listening to a call from Dave Ramsey a couple of years ago, and this gentleman called in, and he had a lot of money in his 401k, and he could virtually retire, but he didn't have any liquid money. So, like when people have the 401k money, but then they don't have any money, can you talk about that a little bit? Because a lot of people think if they have the retirement account, stacked, they're in a good situation. But if you don't have liquid money for an emergency, you're still you probably would feel broke.
And probably are. Right?
Wow.
Even if it's $500,000 in a 401k, every single dollar that comes out of there you're only going to get 75% on the dollar. That goes to that diversification I touched on, where like people that should have, as they get closer and closer, it's kind of taxable. That's your checking account, your savings account, that's your emergency fund, right? And or your regular brokerage account, and then your 401k is kind of your tax deferred, and then your Roth IRA, et cetera, is your tax free. But that's one of those things that you can't do in a task. You got to do it over a long period of time. And it's a little more complicated than just, I think I'll go do that. So people are really challenged by getting help, and it's not their fault. So I want to kind of put this group, especially since you said this is a group we're talking to or has a tendency to get on this call. 80% of millionaires in America are self-made.
Wow.
Okay. So that whole argument that you hear people make, oh, that person inherited the money, got the money from somewhere else. That's not true. That's not true. Most people in America that have money, have assets, they did it themselves. Okay. Now, the two sides of that coin, though, are if you've done it yourself, you almost always have this personality. You're usually super type A. You're usually a do-it-yourselfer. You're usually very go it alone. I can get this done. I can make this happen. That's a very common trait for people who are self-made, either millionaires or self-made financially independent, right? It's very common because and they're usually, on top of all that, they're usually very smart. So they're super fast learners. So something like YouTube or listening to a radio show is more than enough for them to understand what they need to do. Okay. So then how do you introduce a professional into their lives when to them it just feels like either a waste of money, a waste of time, or they're just being sold something? Right. Because our industry did it. Right. So people like me show up and we try to sell them life insurance and they're just like, get away. I mean, we're hardly, we're kind of on the same level as a used car salesperson when you talk to like financial people, right? Especially that group that you
Mhm.
just talked about. They don't want advice and they're not taught to get advice. And so it's a very interesting conundrum for a lot of people.
Okay, so say we have someone listening to us that's in that group and they just won't go and get help with their finances. What do you recommend that they do to break out of that mindset?
Um, so here's what happens. So let me break down the difference between people with money and people who just make a lot of money and they're kind of new to making money. People
Mm-hmm.
with money seeking counsel. If I was rewriting the book, I would call it Be Curious. I
Wow.
wouldn't call it Seek Counsel. Okay.
Okay.
So I would call it Be Curious because, and the reason I say that is because people that have money, they don't have any obligation to do anything when they ask people for advice, but they'll ask lots of people, right?
Right.
So if they're born rich, it's very common for that group of people to ask lots of people for input, okay? But they don't have any at all any feeling that they need to do something with that information. They don't have to. They can just take it in and do nothing with it. Okay, because they ask so many people for input, or they're curious is another way to word it, that they don't have that obligation. People that I'm talking about, because I'm one of them, so I'm not talking to, I'm talking with lots of
Okay.
people that are successful, have kind of built it themselves, started with the process. People like me, when I ask for your advice, so if I say, Teresa, what do you think about that? And then you give me that advice. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think I have to do something with it. So I either have to reject it,
Mm-hmm.
I have to say I'm not taking it,
Right.
I have to explain I'm going to take pieces of it, right?
Right.
But I have to do something with it. I took the time to ask you,
Right.
and now you give me the information, and I have to do something with it. Okay. People that are rich, they don't have that feeling. They'll ask you a question. And now that I bring this up, wait and see. You'll see. They'll ask you a question for input. You give them input. You'll almost think they just nonchalantly, like, why'd you even ask me? You did nothing with it. You didn't even acknowledge,
Wow.
but they took it, and then they took it faster. The reason they didn't acknowledge is because they just don't. It's kind of, think of it like an inbox. So someone that's rich, they'll ask for people to give them input, right? So think of it as your inbox, an email. In comes an email. You and I think, I got to take this email and I got to do something with it. I'll put it in my delete, I'll put it in my archives, I'll respond to it, but I got to do something, right?
Right.
Every email that comes in, that's why I hate being on emails. So I got 50 things I got to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rich people, so think of that as advice, right? That's exactly how we think of when we take financial advice. Okay, now think about rich people, Teresa. When they get an email, it just automatically flips through. They take 10 seconds where it's on their screen and they glance at it, and then it goes to delete. Auto. I
Wow.
don't do anything with it. That's just so I'm not saying they do that with their emails. I'm just saying, think of it like financial advice is like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't. There's no guilt. There's no anything. And so just understand, they get advice. They learn to get advice from a very young age. And people that are self-made, rich, we place too much advice because we don't get advice very often. We either blow it off or we put too much value on it. Dave Ramsey followers are terrible. Again, I'm huge. People put way too much value in Ramsey's advice. Way too much. Like I'm like, you can't do that because it's not personal. It's good general advice, but it's not advice for you individually. So yeah, take his advice and think about it, but that doesn't mean it's golden. It just means it's another data point for you to take analysis of.
Tim,
It's not.
that was huge. So, but like with the
So
wealth Like you're absolutely correct. Like there are some people, it's Dave Ramsey, and like his advice, like they take it and they run with it. But like you say, it's not personalized. But like a wealthy person, they wouldn't really take his advice. They would kind of like just blow it off.
No question about it. And they wouldn't just blow it on. They would hear it though. So I'm going to give you a very quick story. I'm going to give it a really short story, but I'm going to give it. This has nothing to do with politics. Okay, it really doesn't. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. It has nothing to do with politics, but it's a Trump story. So Ivanka Trump did a podcast just about 3 weeks ago. Now, I'd already written the book, and everything I just told you, I already knew and kind of believed that. But I'm watching this podcast with Ivanka on Lex Friedman. Okay. And Lex says, "What's the one thing you learned from your dad?" And she says, "Be curious." She goes, and no pause. Just almost immediately she answers that question. And he goes, "Interesting." He goes, "Give me an example." And she goes, and you can go pull this up right now. You can go to later if you Ivanka. It's one of the few interviews she's done in the last 3 years. So if you do, Ivanka Friedman, it'll pop right up. But it was so fascinating, Teresa, because she looks at it and she goes, "I'll give you an example." She goes, we had bought the post office building in downtown Manhattan. And that was my first executive job in the Trump organization. Okay. So she joined the Trump organization, worked her way up. Now she was an executive, senior executive, and she was in charge of the post office. And she says, one of our biggest challenges with that project was this atrium. There was an atrium in the middle of it. And we wanted that atrium to be 70 degrees all the time. So if it was 90 degrees outside, we wanted 70. If it was 40 degrees outside, we wanted 70, right? So we spent enormous amounts of money and time on how do we make this massive atrium 70 degrees all the time. And it was really putting stress on the financials of the project and everyone involved, right? The engineers, everyone was just like, man, this is really complicated. And Trump shows up and he says, well, let's go do a walk. Let's walk through. So he walks around the thing, and all of a sudden she even had that. You can even see it in her face. She's just like, it was very strange because all of a sudden he starts talking to the heating and air guys, the guys doing the duct work. Okay, I mean literally the guys doing. You and I would never do that. I would never do that. I'm not going to talk for you, but I would think, oh, I'm going to talk to the guys in the $5,000 suits. I'm going to talk to the engineers. They know what they're doing, right? Not Trump. He starts talking to the guys doing the ductwork. Now, and she goes, it was fascinating because again, now Ivanka grew up rich and kind of going through, so she even thought it was a little bit strange. But the first three or four people said nothing. She goes, no, we got nothing from him. She goes, all of a sudden we get to the fourth or fifth guy, and he looks at Trump and he says, you want me to be honest? And the guy goes, and Trump goes, yeah, be honest. He goes, you're over engineering it. He goes, you're spending too much money on it. And he goes, and I don't even know if it's going to work. You're trying to fix a problem that probably doesn't even exist. He goes, yeah, it's 90 degrees in New York, but 1 or 2% of the time. He goes, it's 30 or 40 degrees in New York, 1 or 2% of the time. He goes, most of the time, it's just not a point. And people aren't going to even notice if it's 65 or if it's 75. He goes, you're over engineering it and spending too much time and money on that one process. The reason I tell that story is when I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is exactly my story of rich people. Like he didn't care. The first three people he asked, they gave him an answer. He just walked on. Nothing happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. And normal people where he'll spend all day doing that. I mean, but because that's just what he does. So and if you watch, even Ivanka said it was like an aha moment even for her. Now at that time she was probably early 30s, right? So she was still early in her career.
Mm-hmm.
But that happens like over and over again with all of us, especially people like me who's kind of made it myself. I don't really ask questions. And when I do, I think I have to do something with it. People that are rich do not.
Wow. So that's great information because I would have never known that. And I appreciate the Ivanka story. That was
No,
very good. But like in my brain, it's like Trump just kept going until he got the right answer, until someone could give him the information that he needed. So I thought that was good
Exactly. But even with that information, we don't know how much he valued it, right? Because
too. Right.
it's very likely that he'd already knew all that, right?
Uh-huh.
So again, it's just back to that. It's not, oh, that guy gave him the answer and they go do it. It was more he needed. Again, it's just back to that. Be curious. That's the takeaway. It's not that that guy gave him the answer. That guy gave him an answer that he naturally sought.
Okay. Well, that was good. And because we mentioned plan assist, so we'll transition to plan assist. You mentioned that earlier, but you didn't really tell the audience what exactly plan assist is.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, because we got into and I'll make my answers a little shorter. I'll tighten them up here. So
Oh, they're
plan
good.
assist. So plan assist is nothing more than a process for people. The book, you can buy it on Amazon. You can download it on Amazon on planassist.com for free. It's one of those projects that I thought I could do in a couple months because I'd written a couple hundred blogs. I've been doing this for most of my life. Most of the stuff that I did, I thought, well, I already know all that stuff, but it ended up being a lot more difficult than I thought. But I had two objectives in mind. I wanted to kind of point out what people with money do naturally, whether they use the words I use or not, but they follow the strategies that I follow. And then second is I wanted them to be kind of high level. So I don't get into the numbers. It's only about 45 pages. So this is not some long book. It's more
Mm-hmm.
written to give you kind of high level principles that you have to have.
Mm-hmm.
And the three core principles is have a plan, be diversified, and then seek counsel. And seek counsel is a combination of learn how to get informal counsel and formal counsel,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like Ramsey is informal counsel,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's a radio show. A book is informal counsel, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so so if someone asks you and I what we think about something at a cookout, that's informal, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. It's very valuable. So our friends that give us advice, very, very valuable. But
Mm-hmm.
formal advice is then usually advice when they hire you as their coach,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or hire me, right? Now that's different advice. And I try to tell people, you don't understand. Once you hire me, I'm going to give you different advice, interesting enough than I would and it's not like I'm trying to give you good, bad, or different. It's
Mm-hmm.
different because when I'm talking to you at a cookout, I'm giving general advice. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to you as a client, I'm giving you specific advice.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And you're going to be giving advice to help them make their money grow.
That's right. No, it's very specific. And it's very specific to them because I understand more stuff that exists, right? So for some people, I'll prioritize maxing out your 401k. For other people, I'll get, paying off some debt, which again, most people I work with, that's not the big point, but it is for some, right? It's that prioritization.
Okay. Well,
But
that's good.
and it's getting like your paperwork in order. It's that it's very specific to that couple or that person.
Mm-hmm. And so, with the clients that you've worked with, can you give us three mistakes that you see that's common among most of your clients that they make with their money?
Live within your means is the number one mistake. Okay, that's and even people that make a lot of money living with underneath how much they make, right? So have income and expenses and staying within that budget is what you and I would call budget, but
Okay.
living under their means.
Okay.
Number two is they don't max out their retirement account.
Oh wow,
I
that's a
mean,
big.
like I'll talk to people and say, are you doing your 401k? And they'll say, yes, my company matches 5% or 6% and gives me 3, so I do 6. And I said, well, you can do $20,000. I mean, why are you doing 2,000 or 5,000 when you can do 20?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't understand that, and they don't realize that they could do a lot more money. But maxing out all their retirement accounts, their Roths, their Simples, whatever accounts they have access to. This goes to that specific advice because it doesn't apply to everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
everyone has access to retirement accounts, and making sure you're taking the most advantage of what you have access to. And then the third is the most controversial. And if you talk to 10 financial advisors, probably 9 are going to tell you that I'm wrong, is they count their house as an investment. Your house is not an investment plan. It's not part of your financial plan. Your house you should not count it at all. It's not part of your net worth. It's part of your estate plan. It's part of what happens when you die. Where do you want that money to go? But that's all it is.
And
So
why is
those are the three plans.
and why is
Because
that?
you have to live someplace. And
Okay,
people will say, "Oh, my house is worth $500,000." I said, "Okay, but even if it's paid off, it doesn't matter. You still got to live someplace. Where are you going to live?"
that's
Right.
true.
So you can't use that money for investments, right? So, and then they'll say, "Well, I'm going to downsize." And I said, "You're not downsizing. Ask your husband or your wife. You want to go move down? You're not. People don't move down. They don't. It happens. So I don't want to say it never happens, but it's very rare that people will go from, a $500,000 house to a $200,000 house. It happens, but it's rare.
That would be very rare unless it's on a beach and it's a very nice house, and you can't get a 200,000 nice house.
Exactly. It's just very rare. But people will say that that's part of my financial plan, right? And I'm like, that's not a good plan. That's like a hope plan. That's like a just build your net worth. Your house is part of your estate plan. That goes to your kids or your church or whatever you want it to do. And
Well,
just don't count it as part of your investments because it makes you make different financial decisions that are not necessarily good for your financial plan long term.
Tim, I think we'll talk about that a few more seconds because that is a huge deal. Many people consider their house as part of their net worth, which is what puts them over the millionaire status. But
That's right.
based on what you're saying, and it makes total sense, you really cannot count your home as part of your net worth because you can't spend the money. And if you even sell it, you still got to use the money to purchase something else.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so I just want people to understand, and I know thousands of people
Right.
think home puts them over the millionaire mark.
Right.
But that's not true, which personally, I never looked at it the way that you've explained it, that it's a part of your estate planning. So that is just like new to me because I'm like, well, that does make sense because you have to have somewhere to live. But I really do. I had the mentality that your home was part of your millionaire status.
Exactly. And yeah, it might be, I guess, if you count it, if you're saying what's my estate value, you're a millionaire. If you say what's my net worth for kind of living, you're not because you can't count. You shouldn't be counting your house. And going back to people who make a lot of money and who have a lot of money, people that have a lot of money, you watch, they don't talk about what their house is worth. They don't care because it's not part of their investment. They don't, that's not part of their investment world. They buy and sell houses based on lifestyle, based on where they want to live and the location. It's not that different than a vacation for a normal person.
Well, that was good because I hope somebody is watching us who was counting their home as getting them over the millionaire mark because this is
Oh,
big.
it's I get into some fun conversations. Now again, I only have 50 clients, so I know them all really well, but we get into some really heated conversations about that. So when I do their plan, I minus their house. And they're
And
like, "Well, where's my house at?" And they're like, "Well, that's part of your estate plan. Are we doing an estate plan?" They'll say no. And I said, "Then we're counting it. You got to move somewhere."
I like that, Tim. You need to put that on a billboard. Your home is not what's going to put you over a millionaire status. It just won't because
Well,
if you
and,
sell
and,
it,
he, and here's what happens. Here's why that's so important. So here's why it's so important that you don't count your house. What happens is if you think of your house as part of your net worth, okay, then you're going to make decisions that you wouldn't make if you didn't have your house's net worth. So you're going to buy a different car because you're going to say my house is worth 500,000 and it's paid off. So I'm going to go I make whatever, $5,000 a month net worth. But my car's worth, I can just borrow some money or I can go into debt. I have $500,000 worth of money that I can kind of access in my house. It's a false sense of security that you don't want to calculate into financial decisions.
thank you for sharing that. I'm sure somebody's going to listen to this and be amazed or shocked that they should not be
Oh
counting.
yeah. I get into this conversation with some of my financial advisor friends, and they're like, "No, we count the house." I said, "You shouldn't."
But you're right. When you think about it logically, you shouldn't.
That's right. You really
Right.
shouldn't, because it does. And when you think about it, people that have money, again, people that make money, people that are rich, they don't count their houses. I'm telling you, they do not count their houses. They don't. You never hear them talk about what their house is worth, or they don't. That's just not part of it goes back to a mindset and how you make financial decisions.
Hmm.
And when you make them, you'll make them. Again, it's complicated, right? So whenever you make a financial decision, the best way I can describe it is why a plan's so important. And I touch on this in the book is the first two, and we've kind of gone all over the place, but the first two are pretty common, right? I mean, so if you could sit down with 10 financial planners, they're all going to give you similar plans. A plan's a plan. What'll
Hmm.
get into a debate is kind of what order, but I want to give you kind of why a plan's so important. So those of you who have ever built an extension on your home, think of it like this. If you built a new room on your home, that first kind of building that extension, you can kind of do that yourself, right?
Hmm.
What's the size of the room? What's the height of the room? What are the colors? Oh, that's fun. It's actually fun and enjoyable. Where it gets really, really painful is when you go and hire the engineer to build that room, right? So when the engineer shows up and they put it in CAD and they start telling you, oh, by the way, because you're in Florida, you're going to need to use this material. And no, you can't use that height of the room because of da da da. Oh, you need to put your ceiling needs to be this. It becomes very complicated, because what that engineer does is they connect all the dots. They connect your electrical to your plumbing to your bathroom to the height of the building and all that kind of stuff. It's still somewhat fun, but you still got to connect the dots. And that's what a good financial plan will do with your financials. And that's why it's so personal, because all those pieces have to
Hmm.
get connected at some point. And the house is part of it, right? So yeah, you kind of build it in there where you know it exists, but that's more in a sense of how much does it cost me to maintain it,
Oh,
not
yes.
so much how much is it worth.
Okay. That's a good point to look at too. Look, those are brain teasers because you have to put that into also.
Right.
Okay, so now for our listeners, because you are a certified financial planner with tons of experience, can you tell our listeners why it is so important for them to have a financial plan?
I kind of touched on it in just a minute. So a plan is that connecting the dots to all your other financial decisions. That's first and foremost. So that's imperative, and I can't explain. I can't recommend it enough. But equally important is getting your significant other on the same page. Okay, I can't tell you how many couples I've sat down with where one person, it's not always it's sometimes it's the woman and sometimes it's the man, but almost every couple will have one person who knows what's going on and the other person almost knows nothing, right? It's fascinating. Have you done it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
I
I
mean,
do.
like literally nothing. And it's not a man or woman thing. It's a couple thing.
It
Well,
is.
a plan connects you two. That's the piece that makes sure that the other party knows where are we at. So when we have that conversation, like in my world, it's my wife.
Mhm.
When she says I want to do that, I'm like, if we do that, here's going to be the pain. So yeah, we can do it, but not without cutting this or doing that. And then sometimes she'll say, yeah, I still want to do it, and we'll go forward. I'm okay with it. Sometimes, we'll get on the same page. But other times she'll say, no, 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 I'm not doing that. No, you mean we can't do that without doing that? And I say, no, we can't. And then she'll say, okay, we can't. The plan is what helps that. It just stops those senseless arguments.
Okay, do you think someone without a plan can have a nice, peaceful retirement?
No, they don't. But when I say no, the part you have to understand is again, there's this whole level of people who are really, really smart and have it in their head. So even someone who says I don't have a plan, and I've sat down with people that say I don't have a plan, but then if I sit down and let them talk, they have a plan.
Okay, they
Right.
just
So
rich.
so 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 they don't, it's not their 40-page document. They know
Mhm.
how much is coming in, how much is going out. They know how the money's invested. They just don't have a formal written up document that I'm talking about. So when I say no, people that retire successfully all have a plan. It's just what form is it in, right? And sometimes it can be a napkin. I mean, as silly as that sounds, but I mean, it doesn't have to be a lot, right? Because a plan is basically nothing more than a list of your assets, your expenses, your income,
Mm-hmm.
tracked over some period of time. Well, people have that and that are successful. All of them have it, but there are people that don't, and that's where a plan becomes important.
Okay. And then, like with your clients, is it important for you as a certified financial planner for your clients to have a budget, like a spreadsheet or anything like that? Or do they make so much money they really don't need to have like a spreadsheet to keep it with their money? A budget.
They have to have a budget, and some will use a spread. I don't get involved in the spreadsheet. I keep it high level. Now, some advisors will get really specific. I don't, because it's not my personality, or
Mm-hmm.
everyone's kind of got their. So to answer your question, somewhere you got to know what your expenses are, but then but the advisor may and may not get that granular,
Okay.
right? But they
Mm-hmm.
might, right? So at some point though, the person has to see it. So hiring someone like yourself to
Mm-hmm.
sit down and just walk through, it's an eye-opening experience, because most people have no idea how much they just waste.
Right. Make a lot of money. Like, you might have someone making 150, 180 a year, but they have no idea where their money is and they feel like they're broke because they don't have a plan.
That's right. They
So,
don't. They have plenty of cash to
mhm.
bail them out of stupid financial mistakes, is the best way to describe it. So they just make silly financial mistakes after silly financial mistakes. But if you're making 150 grand a year, you don't have the emotional attachment to those mistakes, because you just earn your way back out of them. But then you don't build your net worth.
Right. That's true because you're spending it all.
Yeah, but it's common.
Hmm.
I'm convinced, back to how we started this call, I
Hmm.
think there's more people in that middle group than
Oh,
there
yeah.
are people who are really in debt and have no money, or people that have a lot of money and have financial advisors. I think the majority of Americans are in that middle group, and there really isn't a place for them. That's comfortable. No one has figured out how to help that group in mass, right?
Wow.
That feels warm, trusting, inviting. That's, I mean, people have tried, but they haven't quite figured it out,
Okay. And so you've mentioned the man.
including me.
You figured it out. You probably just want to,
No,
but you figured it
no,
out.
no,
Yes, you
no.
have.
So no, I really haven't. I mean, it's like very difficult, because you can't, because that group is very untrusting, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's like, I mean, my clients that I have, they trust me because they get their referrals, et cetera. How do you get that person, like those couples that I met at church, right? I mean, that group, I don't know how that's the
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I think what I've tried to do with Plan Assist is make it as simple as Orange Theory. Have you ever worked out at Orange Theory?
Once, and I was like, I'm never going back.
You did.
Yes,
So
it's too tough.
so here's an interesting story about Orange Theory. So just real quickly, Orange Theory. I'm in one of those neighborhoods where everyone has a bunch of money, and I started talking. We were at some social gathering, and all of a sudden they're all saying they go to Orange Theory. I'd never heard of it. I'm just like, what are you talking about, Orange Theory? And they said,
Mhm.
that's where we go work out. And I said, how much do you pay for that? And they said, $125. And I said, that's nuts. I said, I can go to goddamn LA Fitness for $30 or $19. I can go to like, and they said, no, you don't understand, because I get this coach and I get this, they put them in these little 1,500 square foot things. So I went and started doing research on Orange Theory, and I found, not for me personally, but more for how that's the fastest growing, one of the top fastest growing franchises in America is Orange Theory. Okay. I mean, it's like through the roof as far as growth and generating. For someone that wants to start a small business, that's one of the the,
Wow.
the top franchises to do. And so I was studying them from a marketing perspective, because that's their target, the exact target we're talking about, right? So it's not that person who has no money because they go to LA Fitness, or the person has a bunch of money, they just have their own workout at home, right? There's this group in
Right.
the middle, right? So when I went and found it, I found it fascinating, because they focus on three things. They focus on rowing, cardio, and weights. Those are their three things. And then, based on what you need personally, they'll put a plan together that will be some variation of those three. So that some people will have a lot more cardio than rowing and weight. Other people have more weight than cardio. But
Mhm.
that's a financial plan, right? So how do we help people? That's a very welcoming, encouraging place for people to go and kind of get in shape, and it shows by their numbers. We
Mhm.
don't we don't have that equivalent in the financial services world.
Wow. Maybe one day.
Exactly.
But you mentioned the word that I want us to touch on. Can you give the listener some advice about debt? I know you can.
The only debt you should have is what we in the financial services world would call good debt. Okay, so there's bad debt, good debt. Ramsey touches on it. Most people know what it is. But if you're gonna have debt on your house, okay. Debt on a car under the right circumstances based on income, you're probably okay. I mean, other than that, debt owns you. So you got to
Amen.
have minimal amounts of debt. I mean, and most people just just let it hang over them for so long and they could just get out of it in 2 years. They could hire someone like you with
Yeah.
a hyper focus. In 2 years, they'd be done. I
If
mean, a
the
lot of them aren't that far in debt. I mean, 20, 30, $40,000 in debt, making 100 grand. And that means they could get out of debt in 2 years. So, but you can't have bad debt. I mean, credit card debt, rotating debt. I mean, just get rid of it. You,
okay.
you can't become financial independent with debt. Is that do you agree with me on that?
I completely agree with you. And debt is such a big thing because, people can't wait or either they want to be like the Joneses. And my concern is now because the feds have dropped the interest rates, it's going to be a psychological, oh, I can go buy this and I can go finance this. And I'm just hoping people won't, fall into the trap because regardless of what the interest rate is, you still got to pay it back.
Right.
So
Got it.
hopefully,
Yeah. It's a but get started like investing, get some money in a 401k. I mean, that's, again, back to have a plan. Someone like you can help them with a plan.
that's right.
I'm only registered in Florida and Indiana and Michigan, so I can't help people kind of outside that bucket. So I'm not soliciting or want business kind of, if people are outside kind of those areas, I can't really help them, but they can definitely download the book and kind
Right.
of read through it and kind of get a sense of, and then go find another, either use you, or if they need something more, they might, at least it'll help them with some questions they'd ask as they look for a financial advisor.
Okay. Well, Tim, before I let you go, this is something I think would be a nice, sweet ending. And so when I did my research on you, you said that financial success is not an event of accumulation, but it's our decisions that we've made over decades. And that just like grabbed me. And I think it's very important for our listeners to hear you talk about that just for a few seconds, a few
Uh,
minutes.
so so when it comes to finances, too many people think that I'm going to hit the lottery, I'm going to get that job, I'm going to get that bonus. They think of financial success as some event, when in reality, it's just the accumulation of all your decisions over decades. It's just make real, like, it's that I'm not. And I don't like using this, but it is a good example. Is for some people, buying $5 cup of coffee every day is no big deal. But for some people, that's the difference between getting out of debt in 2 years and not. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just really hyper focus on getting good at making good financial decisions, and over time it makes a massive difference in your net worth. That's probably the best way to word it. And making good financial decisions goes back to seeking counsel. Those people that have money, they just do it all the time, right? So where people that don't have money, they don't make financial decisions very often, so they're very stressed about it. They don't want to make a bad decision or something like that. So just get used to making small financial decisions all the time. Go
Mm-hmm.
get used to asking people's opinion with no expectation of doing anything with it all the time. Just seek counsel, and a better way to word it is be curious.
Wonderful. I like that. So now, Tim, I like that. Maybe that's going to be the name of your next book.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I need you to tell people the name of your book, where they can find it, and where they can find you.
Okay. So the name of the book is Plan Assist. Okay. So PLANASSIST, right? So very simple, Plan Assist. And you can find it on planassist.com/book. So you can download it for free. So you can go on planassist.com, download it. You can also order it on Amazon. So if you want to order a paper copy or download it into your Kindle, but I actually have a download EPUB on my website. So if you want to read it on your Kindle, you can download it for free there. It's only 40 pages, but it's really what I see the difference between people that have money versus people who just make money. I really share those pieces in that little 45, 50 page. It doesn't, you still got to go do something with it or go get advice, but it lays out that blueprint how you started the call.
Wonderful. Well, Tim, I would like to thank you so much for joining me today on
I
Bartell's Money.
appreciate it.
Yes, and I look forward to speaking with you again. And again, thank you so much for joining us. The information has been so valuable.
Thanks for having me, Teresa. I enjoyed it. Thanks a bunch.
I did too. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Okay, everyone, this is serious business. You need to take your time, be patient, and accumulate your wealth. And you need a plan. Don't just spend all your money not knowing where it's going. We are here at Bartell's Money Talk to talk about money. We want you to have a successful retirement and we want you to enjoy life and not be bothered about your money. So be patient, accumulate your wealth, make sure you understand that it doesn't happen overnight. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and that if you like it, that you will share it and subscribe and join us here again next week. Thanks for watching.